Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome to this video. So today I'm going to be talking about waffle plots, and a waffle plot is basically it's just a square pie chart is what they're known as, and is a good way of seeing cumulative values within a data set. So for example, we can see how many, if we were doing votes, for example, with the election coming up, we could see how many votes each candidate is getting. So waffle plots are really cool. I'm going to be doing the tutorial in Python. There is a package called PyWaffle. I'll link the documentation in the description below. And as well, if you're doing it in R, there's a package called Waffle. I'll find the documentation on that and I'll put it below if you're interested in creating them in R. From what I've seen, it's pretty simple in R, but I just prefer Python for creating visualizations. So be sure to check those out, and as well, let's jump into the tutorial. Okay guys, so welcome to this section of the tutorial. So what we're going to do first is we're going to get the data. So you can get the data really from anywhere. I'm going to use fbref.com. I was looking for sports cards right there. Anyways, we're going to get data from fbref.com. That's where the easiest place for me to get soccer data is. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go to a club, and I personally am a Barcelona fan. Hopefully that doesn't offend too many people. I know it can be offensive, but we'll go to Barcelona and we will look at the matches down here. So we're going to go to scores and fixtures. I'll include this link. So if we go to match report, and then, so I'll include the link and everything in case you're not able to follow along. But what we're going to do is we are going to get the Barcelona player stats, and then we're going to do possessions. So we're going to do possession, and then we're going to go to share and more, get table as CSV right here. And then we'll just copy this whole thing right here. We don't need this top one, but we'll just hit copy. So you can copy right there. And then we're going to go into Excel, open up a brand new workbook. You can do this in Google Sheets too. I just use Excel because Excel is faster to open, just right there on the desktop. And then you'll notice when you copy it in right here, you'll see all of this, and it's not in how we want it. It's all in the first column. So what you need to do is click on the first column and then go to the data tab up here, click data, and then you need to go to the text to columns. So for me, it's right here. It might be different on a Windows machine or Linux or whatever you're using. So if you click on text to columns and then make sure delimited is clicked, click next, and then make sure comma is clicked right here. Then you can click next again. Then this is kind of just showing everything. Everything should just be fine, and then click finish. And then we have everything in the right position. So the big thing about waffle charts is that they require the data to be set up a certain way. So we're going to make our job 10 times easier by just already deleting columns. Obviously, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I like to delete columns. So just so it makes it easier with the actual code. If I can delete columns here, it'll make it easier in the actual code. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete, first of all, we're going to delete everything because we're just looking at touches. So we're going to delete everything to the right of where it says touches up there. So if you just select all those and then right click, hit delete, gets rid of all those. And then we don't need this top row anymore because we know those are all touches. So we'll just delete that row as well. Right click, delete. And then we aren't going to be looking at this live because it does have something to do with it. But what we're most interested in is this right here, the defensive pen, the defensive third, mid-third, etc. We're wanting to know exactly where these players made their touches. So we're going to skip, or we're going to keep those, but we're going to delete this live. So just right click on that column, hit delete. The other rows that we're going to keep are not rows, columns. So we only want touches through attacking pen. We just want those right there just for the sake of our data. So we're going to get rid of number, nation, position, and minute. You could obviously keep those if you want to. I am not going to use them in this tutorial, so we will delete those as well. And so that's what the data looks like just after we've cleaned it up a little bit. You'll have a player, touches, defensive pen, and then 15. This is the sum row right here. This is the summary of all the columns. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to save it. So you hit File, Save As, and just name it something easy. So we'll just say touches. And then save it where you know you're going to have it. So I'll just save it to the downloads. Make sure you're saving it as a CSV. It'll make it easier to load the data. I guess it'll make it the same, but I just like using CSVs. So you hit save. And then what we need to do is we're going to use Jupyter Notebooks for this tutorial. So if you go and you open Jupyter Notebooks, I usually just do it in terminal or in the command line, I think is what it's called on Windows. So you open it up, you just type in Jupyter Notebook, and it should open it up if you have it installed through the Anaconda. So we have that, and then the easiest thing to do is, so we saved it in the downloads, so we're just going to open up the downloads file right here. You just need to go really where you saved that CSV. So if you scroll down, you can see I have the touches right here. And then you can go over to New, Python 3. Obviously, you can do this in any sort of environment or text editor. I just like Jupyter Notebooks because it makes it a lot easier. So what we'll do now is we'll just name this BCN Sevilla. We can just name it that for now. And so there's a couple of packages that we're going to be using. The first one is we're going to be using matplotlib pyplot. So we'll just say import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. And then as well, we're going to be using pandas. So we'll say import pandas as PD. And then the other thing we're going to be using, you don't need to do this, but I just like saying import matplotlib as MPL just to make it so I'm not having to type out matplotlib every single time if you ever wanted to use it later. And then the last thing we're using, this is how we're actually going to make the waffle plots. We're going to say we need to install another package using pip install. So I usually do this just by going to terminal down here, command line. If you just open up a new one, so you say new window, it opens up a new one, and then you say pip install PyWaffle. So PyWaffle is the package we're going to be using in Python. You hit enter, and it'll download it, and I have already done that, so it's going to say requirement already met, and so it successfully downloaded. It might take a little bit longer for you, depending on if you've ever downloaded this or not. So we'll exit out of that one. You can close that one. So what we're going to say here is from PyWaffle, so that's the package name, import waffle. So just like that. So PyWaffle is the package, and then waffle is the section of that package that we're going to be using. So we'll just run that. And it shouldn't take very long to run. So you'll see over here in Jupyter Notebooks, if you have a number in there, that means it ran. Otherwise, you'll get a big error or something. So that is how that's getting set up for everything. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to import the data, and then we're going to clean the data up a little bit so that we can manipulate the data and then plot the data with the waffle plots. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a data frame with pandas. We're going to say data frame equals pd.read CSV, and then we called it touches.csv. And we'll run that, and it says it ran. We can check real quick. So if we say df.head, it'll show us. Okay, so we have player is the column. These are our indexes over here. We have player, touches, defensive pen, defensive third, etc. So it imported correctly is what we're looking for. Okay, so now the biggest thing that we need to do is we need to organize this data to make it so that we can use the PyWaffle package on it. Because, I mean, I've messed around with the PyWaffle a lot, and it really likes the data in a certain format. It likes it when you have the categories up here, and then you have in the columns, and then you have the metrics as indices. That's the easiest way I found to do it. So we're actually going to need to eventually switch this. So the player names are columns, and then the rows are the different metrics that we're measuring. So we'll be switching it so defensive pen, defensive third, etc. So what we're going to do first is to make it easier to manipulate these rows right here is we're going to edit the player names. And the way we're going to do this is we're just going to rename data frame player. So we're calling that column. And then we're going to say df player. And then we're going to split. So this essentially is a string down here. These are all strings. So we're going to say .string .split. And then you notice it has 1 backslash. We can't just use the 1 backslash. We actually have to use 2. That's just the way Python recognizes 1 backslash. And then we'll say expand equals true. And then, so what this is doing is it's splitting these at every instance. So it's going to split every row where there's a backslash. So what we need to do now is we only want the first item. So we only want this first name right here. So we want Lionel Messi, then we want Ansu Fati, and then Pedri, and then Antoine Griezmann. So we're just wanting to split it that way. And so what we do is we put in brackets the number 0. And that's going to select the first instance. Python counts from 0 when it's indexing, so we'll count from there. So we'll hit that, and then we'll run that cell. And then we can check again. And now we have the player where the player is just that first name. And it's going to make it a lot easier to manipulate data from here on out. So the next thing we need to do is we need to sort the data. So we're wanting to sort the data by touches. So we're going to want to start with the person who has the most touches down to the person who had the least touches. So what we'll say is we'll say data frame equals. Then we'll say data frame dot, we'll use the sort values method. And then for arguments, we have to say by equals, and then the column name. So we'll say in parentheses, touches. And then after that, we'll pass another one, ascending. So we want it to be descending, actually. We want it to be from highest to lowest. We'll say false. Run that. And then we can see right here we have, so it's going to sort it by touches, and then we have the total as an actual row. So what we'll do now is we'll just say df equals df dot drop, and then since we haven't reset the indices, so the row numbers, we haven't reset them, it's still row 15, so we'll just say df dot drop, we'll say 15. And now we see that it's sorted by touches. We could actually get the whole thing if we wanted to. We could say dataframe.head. I don't remember how many. We'll say 20. But this is the whole data frame right there. So it might just be better just to call data frame instead of dataframe.head. So now we can see the whole data frame. And it's sorted by touches. And it has the defensive penalties, defensive thirds, everything. Basically, we're almost ready to start using or creating the waffles. But what we also need to do is when creating the waffles, it's going to take each one of these and give you the count of each one. So since touches is a sum of all of these, we don't actually want the touches. We just use that basically to sort. So what we're going to do is we're going to say data frame equals df.drop. So we're going to drop again, or we're going to say touches. Oops. Dataframe.drop. Oh yeah, I was right. Sorry. Touches. And then we need to say which axis it's on, because by default it's going to look in the rows, but we want to look in the columns. So we need to say axis equals 1. And so now you can see by running those cells, it drops the touches. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to transpose this. So transposing basically just means that we're going to switch the rows and the columns. So if we say df equals df.t, so that means transpose. So I'll just make a edit right there. So now that's what our transposed data looks like. You'll notice that the indices are up here. That's the next thing we need to fix. And then the row names are what our column names used to be. So what we're going to do now is we are just going to move these column names up into the actual columns. So we'll say df.columns equals df.iloc 0. So that does that, and then we want to drop the player row. So we'll just say df equals df.drop, and then we'll say player. Oops, I can't spell player. So that drops that, and so this is what our data frame looks like now. And we're almost to the point where it's looking good, and the only thing we're going to do actually is we're going to create a brand new data frame just so it'll have everything set up correctly. So we're going to create a list, we'll just call it my list, of all the data frame column names. So we'll just say data frame, so df.columns.values.toList, and then close that with parentheses. So basically what this is doing, it's creating a list, but it's moving the column names and it's throwing them into a list for us to use. And we'll be using it a lot later. We're going to use it to call the titles of the PyPlot or the Waffle plots, and as well to create our new column or data frame that we're going to do right here. And the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to create a new data frame, call it the same thing. We'll say pd.dataframe. Make sure the D and the F are capitalized. And then for the data, so you have to throw in two arguments. You have to throw in the data, and then you have to throw in columns. So we'll just say data frame, and then we'll say columns equals my underscore list. And so then if we look at that, it'll look like this. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to create a basic waffle plot. So we'll just create one for one player, and then we will get into how you can create multiple with subplots, and then at the end we will go over the design of them and how you can switch up the design and everything and make them look a little bit better. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a figure. So we're going to say fig down here. This is in Matplotlib. We're going to say fig equals plt.figure, and then we need to open up parentheses. I like to hit enter a couple of times just to give me some space to work. And then on the inside of the parentheses, we need to call a couple of things. So we're going to call figure class, and then this is where we're going to say figure class equals waffle. So we do that, and now it knows that we're creating a waffle plot. And then there's a couple of key pieces of information that we need to pass it. So we'll say values equals, so the values are the numbers right here, the values of each of these rows. for each column. So we'll say values equals, and the easiest way to do this with the data frame is we just say df.iloc. So we're calling the location or the iloc, and we're going to say for all rows, but for column 0. So once again, Python counts starting at 0. So column 0 is actually going to be this first column right here, Sergio Roberto. So that's the values. And then the labels, just so it knows what to label everything. So the labels, we are going to pass a list of this data frame indexes right here. So just the name of the row. So we'll say labels equals list df.index. So basically it's just going to take these, put them into a list, and then it'll do the work of just lining these up. Boom, boom, boom. And then if we run that, it should, oops, I did not put a column or a comma. So we run that, and it says rows required. So the next thing we need is at least rows or columns. We'll start with rows. So this says how many rows you want to have. So it's kind of a high number. I think it's up, like if we remember, it's up in the 90s somewhere. So we'll say rows. We'll have 10 rows. I keep forgetting commas. Rows, and boom. There we go. That is our first waffle plot. Super easy syntax, and you don't really need that much information in the actual plot. So there's a couple of different things. As you can see, it puts the colors up here with the labels. So, and then it has it in 10 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then there's a couple more things we can do. So we can add a title. So they do the title. You have to say title equals, and then you're creating a dictionary. So we're going to create a dictionary, and to get the title name, we have to call label. So we'll call label, and then you have to put a colon, and then after the colon, this is where we're going to use the my list. So we'll just say my list, and then we're going to take the very first instance. So this is under the assumption that your list is in the exact same order as these columns, which it should be. So that is the title. We run that again real quick, and as you can see, Sergio Roberto pops up right there. And a couple more things we can do. We can say, we can change the fig size. So if we want to do a 10 by 10, makes it really big. I don't like it that big. So we might try a 5 by 5. And that's kind of the original size it was anyways. But I don't recommend doing anything that's not the same number. So I wouldn't do like a 5 by 25. I mean, it looks like this, but once you start throwing in a lot of them, it's not going to look the same. So just keep it to even numbers like 5, 10. It should look pretty good. And then the last thing you can do, if you want to change the colors, you just say colors equals, and then you have to pass in a list of colors. And you have to pass in the same amount of colors as you have values. So you can't pass in 4 colors. You have to pass in 5 colors if you're wanting to get away from the default colors. So you could do green. These are not the colors I would prefer to do, but just to make, just to show you what you can do. So you can do green, blue, red, yellow, and pink as well. So you do that, and it changes the colors. It's pretty ugly with those colors. I would not recommend doing that. But yeah, so that's basically a simple waffle plot. As well, if you're wanting to, you can change this to be, you can add the columns as well. So you get a 10 by 10, can't type. So this will make sure that you don't go outside of 10 columns. You don't have anything above 100 values, so it shouldn't really change too much, but it will just make it kind of look a little bit nicer like this. But if you're wanting to account for every single instance, I would just leave columns out, as it will plot every single value as a different box. So that's a basic waffle plot. So the next thing we can do is we can create subplots. So creating a subplot is pretty simple. You're going to basically do the same thing, but you're going to do it you can do it up to 9 times. That's what I've been able to do with them. I don't really recommend doing more than 9 waffle plots, just because it kind of looks a little weird if you have a ton of them. Like if you had like 25 on one graphic, it might be hard to see everything as well, be able to distinguish numbers and the count of everything. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create another fig. So we say fig equals plot.figure, like we did before, parentheses, add a couple lines, and then if you do the figure class again, so we'll say figure class equals waffle, comma, and then we'll set the rows equal to 10, as well as right now we're just going to do the fig size equals, and then in parentheses 10 by 10. So now what you're going to do is you're going to call in an argument called plots. So we'll say plots equals, and then this is going to be a dictionary. So the easiest way I've found to do this is add a couple spaces. We'll go up, and the easiest way I found to do it is to create the first one and then just copy and paste that and go and switch the numbers. It'll be the easiest time saver than trying to go and manually type everything, because you might miss a couple commas or parentheses or brackets, and it's going to get really annoying. So how you do this is, so you have to type in the first thing, you have to put in parentheses. So we're going to do a 3 by 3 plot right here. So we're going to do 3, 3, 1. So what this is doing is, I'll type it out here, and then you're going to put a colon, but I'll do a couple spaces and put a comment out here. So the 3, 3, 1 is a 3 by 3 grid. So you're saying it's a 3 by 3 plot, and then the 1 is the first plot. So it's going to be the first plot in the grid, and it's going to go from left to right. So you're going to have 1. It'll make a little bit more sense when we're done typing out everything. But then what we're going to do is we're going to create another dictionary for all the values. So if we do this, and I'm going to put this up here so I don't keep messing with it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say values. So it's just like before, but we're passing it in dictionaries instead of saying equals to. So we're going to say values equals df.iloc, and then colon, comma, 0, like we did before. And then we're going to say title. So this is how you're going to be able to distinguish each one. And then this is going to be another dictionary. And we're going to say label. Oops, can't spell. Label in parentheses. And then my list. 0, so the first instance. So make sure that these numbers line up, or you're going to get data that's not consistent with the player name. And then after that, we're going to say color. And right now, we'll just say black. We'll probably switch that in a little bit. And then location, I like to line everything up on the left side. That's just, I think it looks best if it's all lined up. So it's going to be, everything's going to be shifted to the left. It'll all be uniform and it'll look nice in the end. So basically what we need to do is we need to just put a comma after this one right here. So it's after the one that lines up with the 3, 3, 1. It's not this one that's clear down here. It's the second one up. And we're just going to copy all of that. So just hit Command C or Control C, and then just go down on a new line and just paste all of those. So we're going to do that. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I pasted it 9 times. And then we need to go through and change. So this is 331. We're going to go through and change this to be 332, and then 333, and so on. 334, 335, 336, 7, 8, 9. So now we have 9 different plots, and we could actually just plot this right now, and it would give us Sergio Roberto 10 times. And I'll just show you what it looks like. So yeah, so we've plotted it, and it gives us Sergio Roberto 10 times or 9 times. So now what we need to do is we need to go through the values and the labels and just switch those. So we want to leave that to be 0, 0. Then on the next one, we'll just go 1, 1. And then we'll come down to this one and we'll go 2. Oops, I went too far. 2, 2. And then 3, 3. And then down here and just so on. So what we're doing is we're just lining up all of these to be able, so they're going to plot the data for the right player. And then as well, I mean, I wouldn't recommend doing more than 9. I'm sure there's some way you could. I just don't think it looks as good, but you could keep going and try and plot everything. I don't know if this would be the best type of graph to represent a lot of different figures and everything, but if you wanted to keep going, you could. But what I would recommend is you create one and then you go and create another for your remaining if you have over 9 different figures. So we could create for the remaining 7 or 6, however many there are, we could create another waffle chart to show all those. But anyways, we have that all lined up, so we'll run that cell. And we've run that, and now you can see we have everybody. So this is what a subplot looks like. We have Sergio Roberto, Sergio Busquets, Messi, Piqué, Araujo, Frankie, and so on. So these are the top 9. And that really is the basics of creating a subplot. So outside of that, we are going to pass in colors. So you can change the colors of the subplots as well. So what you'll do is you'll just type in colors equals, and then I personally like to choose colors that are contrasting and look pretty good, but you'll pass them into parentheses on this one. And then you can just type these colors in. I don't really want to say all the colors, but I mean, you can find colors really anywhere on the internet. I mean, color theory and contrasting colors, because the default colors look fine on this, but I honestly prefer to custom choose colors, as it just helps to make visualizations look better than if you have these really bright colors. I usually prefer more subtle colors and more mute colors, I guess would be a good word for them. I mean, it really depends on the visualization that you're doing. If you're going to have something with a lot of colors, you don't want something that's really bright or anything. So these are the colors I chose, and yeah, we can just run that. And these are the colors it looks like. It doesn't look as good with a white background, but we're going to fix that in a second. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to make this plot look a little bit better, because as you can tell, like, it has some good information, but without any labels or anything, it doesn't really do anything for us. So what we're going to do is we are going to create the plot title, and then we're going to style it a little bit with the plot labels so it looks a little bit better. So what I'm going to use is a package called highlight text. So as you can see, I was messing around with it, making sure I had it right. But what you need to do is go to your terminal or command line, and you need to hit pip install highlight dash text, and it should install for you. It's already installed for me, so it just says requirement already satisfied. And then what we need to do as well is we need to go into our up here into our first one where we've imported. You don't have to go all the way up to the top. That's just where I like to keep them. And you need to run this right here where it says from highlight underscore text import fig underscore text. So if we run that, and so that's going to import the text highlighter that we're going to use, and we're going to use that to create the labels so we don't just have these boxes in every single one, because it would look weird if we had boxes right here and then we put a box on every single one. So what we need to do is outside of our original figure, we're just going to say fig text. We're just going to say fig underscore text. And then we need to pass it a couple of things. So we need to pass it a string first. So the first argument is s. We'll say s equals, and this is our string. So we're going to say, this basically is just going to be our title of the plot. So we're going to say where Barcelona players made touches versus Sevilla. And then that's our title. And then in the same thing, we're going to create our label with words. So if we just do a \n, that's going to make a new line. And then inside of these symbols, I don't actually even know what they're called. We're going to say attacking pen. And then we just need to do that for all of them. So inside of the two symbols, and then we'll say attacking third. Oops, hit enter, attacking third, and then mid third, and then we'll do defensive third, and then we'll just do a plus, and we will do defensive pen. So I actually just realized that these are going to be switched around, I think. No, they shouldn't be. We should be fine. Anyways, so after the S, we need to give it the X and Y coordinates. So we're going to say X equals, and we want it to be as far to the left as possible. So let's do 0.01. And then we need to pass the y as well, the y coordinate, and we'll just do something like 0.99. So we'll just throw it as high up as we can, then we can adjust after. And then you can throw in things like font family, as well as if you want to bold, you can do like string weight. What we will do is we'll do font size. So we'll set it equal to 18. And then to change the color of this string right here, the where Barcelona players made their touches, we pass color, and so we'll say color equals light gray. And as well, for our highlight colors, we need to pass it highlight underscore colors equals, and then we're going to pass in a list this exact thing that we have up here. So we'll just pass in a list right there, and that should be everything for the fig. So what we're going to do now, cool. So now we have the title up here, and as well, now we have a nice looking legend instead of having a and we have a legend instead of having any sort of we have these highlighted legends, but I just realized that I have these flipped. So what we need to do is actually reverse these. Actually, here's what we'll do. We'll just switch. We'll say defensive pen. Oh, that can still be mid third. We'll say attacking third and okay, that should be right. Okay, yeah. So as you can see, we can now see, I mean, we'll switch the background up a little bit. So we can say after all this, if we want to switch the background, we can say fig.patch.set_face color. And then you can pass it a background color that I really like is just something that's kind of grayish or kind of like a dark blue. So if we do that, so now it does that. The only problem is now the title is kind of messed up for each one. So if we go in and we say white, obviously if you know what you're going to do, it kind of helps to save time than having to go back and switch all of these. So we go back to the subplots and we switch these all to be white or whatever color your heart prefers. Now we run that and should be done. So boom. All right, so that is everything there is for creating this, for creating waffle plots. They're really useful, I think. You can check out the documentation, which will be in the description, of all the different things you can do. I just went over the basics. Like you can set up so the columns are all even and everything, and you can make it look really nice. You can divide the data as well. So I'd be sure to check that out, as it'll provide even more value and additional value as to what I've been able to do here. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it, and the support on here as well as Twitter. And be sure to subscribe, as I'll be coming out with more videos in the future. And yeah.